Chapter 9, Lesson 1, Essential Question. How can a line plot help you find an average with data given in fractions? When finding the average of a data point set, you have two steps. Your first step is to add, and your second step is to divide. First step, add all your data points. If I added all of these together, I would get 60. And then the next step is to divide my sum. How many data points are there? There are 5. So I'm going to divide it by 5. 60 divided by 5 equals 12. So my average for this data set is 12. Unlock the problem. Students have measured different amounts of water into beakers for an experiment. The amount of water in each beaker is listed below, and that's the list of data. If the total amount of water stayed the same, what would be the average amount of water in a beaker? So underline what you're being asked to find, and then circle the important information. So you should have underlined the average amount of water in a beaker, or what would be the average amount of water in a beaker. And then I just did kind of one big square around all of the given data. And then the word average, it tells us that we're going to add some things up, and then we're going to be dividing them. And you'll see right here, this is the beginning of a line plot. A line plot, it is a number line, and in this case it's broken into 1/4. So it has 1/4, 1/2, which is the same as 2/4, and then 3/4. And your number line is based upon what your data points are. So step 1 says to count the number of cups for each amount. Draw an X for the number of times each amount is recorded to complete the line plot. Okay, so let's count how many 1/4 are in our data point, how many 1/2 are in our data points, and how many 3/4. Press pause while you count those up and write down the numbers right here. Okay, so I color-coded mine, and as I counted them, I marked them off. So I used red for my 1/4, and I marked them off so I didn't recount them, and I ended up with 7. There were 2 1/2 and 3 3/4. And now you need to draw those X's. Now 1/4, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 X's already there. So how many more would you need to add? Well, you'd need to add 3. And it's important to try to keep your spacing when you're creating a line plot. And then on the 1/2, so right here, and then making it even, that's fairly close. And then 3/4, there needs to be 3 of them. There's 1, 2, 3. So there I have my data points. And you can see even right now that it's not very even, and so I'm going to fix that up. So I can try to bring my third X closer. All right, so let's look at step 2. So now that we have our data points, I know we said we would look at step 2, but we have to remember what is our final end. We're trying to find the average, and so the first step of that is adding. And so we're going to be finding the total amount of water in all of the beakers, and we're going to start with the 1/4. So there are 7 beakers with 1/4 cup in them, because there are 7 X's. Okay, and so how many 1/4 of a cup are there? If there's 7 beakers with 1/4, that ends up being 7 times 1/4, which ends up being 7/4, right? And 7/4 is the same as 1 and 3/4 cups. And so that's how much is in the 1/4. Now we need to go to step 3. And now we're going to work on the 1/2 cups. How much water contains a 1/2 cup? And then in step 4, we're going to find the 3/4 cup. So press pause and complete steps 3 and 4. Okay, so for step 3, you should have counted up 2 and then multiplied 2 times 1/2, and ended up with 2 over 2, which is the same thing as a whole. So that's 1 cup. And then for step 4, there were 3 x's, 3 data points, so we did 3 times 3/4. And I just circled these because remember when you multiply a whole number times a fraction, you multiply the whole number and the numerator only, keeping the denominator. So you end up with 9/4, which reduces down to 2 1/4. So now we're able to move on to step 5. And that means that we need to find the total number. We're still in the first part of finding the average. So we're adding it all together. So we have 1 3/4 from the 1/4 cups. We have 1 from the half cups and 2 1/4 from the 3/4 over here. So if we add all those together, you could do them vertically, but since we do have the same denominator, we can just add our fractions right over the top. So our fractions would add up to being 4 over 4, and our whole numbers would add up to being 1, 2. So 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 is 4. Now remember, 4 over 4 is the same thing as a whole, so that's just another one. So we actually end up with 5. And now the last step of finding an average is we're dividing our sum, which our sum was 5. We're dividing the sum by the number of beakers, okay? So if we needed to, they already showed you, but you would go back up here, and how many data points did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There were 12, so that's why we have 5 divided by 12. And that fractional, because remember, a fraction is another way to write division, it ends up being 5/12. So the average amount of water in a beaker is 5/12 of a cup. And that is your final answer for this problem. Okay, looking at the try this, they're using the numbers from the previous problem, and you can use order of operations, so you can use parentheses and brackets to show the operations that we did individually, but put them together. So the first step is to perform the operations inside the parentheses. So 7 times 1/4, 7 times 1 is 7 over 4. Now they don't have you write it as a fraction, but I want you to. So 2 times 1/2, that would be 2 over 2, correct? But we can see right here we have a 4 in the denominator. So instead of writing 2 over 2, I'm still going to make it a whole number, but I'm going to use the denominator of 4. So I'm going to actually end up writing it 4 over 4, because that's the same as 2 over 2, and then you times both of them by 2. And then 3 times 3/4. 3 times 3 is 9 over 4. So now all I need to do is I need to add up my numerators, okay? Because my denominator is going to be 4. 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 9 is 20. Okay, so what's 20 divided by 4? 20 over 4. That simplifies to being 5. So that ends up being 5 divided by 12. And as a fraction, we know that ends up being 5/12. Okay, so this right here is just the numerical way of writing everything that we just did previously in one equation. If you need to break it down into the smaller steps, feel free to do so. That is okay. Okay, let's move on to this example. Okay, so Rain divides 3 2-ounce bags of rice into smaller bags. The first bag is divided into bags weighing 1/6 ounce each. The second bag is divided into bags weighing 1/3 ounce each. And the third bag is divided into bags weighing 1/2 ounce each. Find the number of 1/6, 1/3, and 1/2 ounce rice bags. Then graph the results on the line plot. So right here is where your end work is going to be. So we need to have a title for the line plot, and it's going to need to describe what we're talking about. Take a moment, underline what you're being asked to find, and that will help give you your title, and then circle the important information. Okay, So I underlined find the number of 1/6, 1/3, and 1/2 ounce rice bags. So we're talking about the weight. That's what an ounce is. So your title right here should say the weight of rice bags. Weight of rice bags. I wrote in ounces because that's the weight that we are using. So next you needed to label your line plot, so our number line right down here. They did that for you, 1/6, 1/3, 1/2, because that's what we're dividing them into. And so now, at my right here, they tell us to divide, so we know we're using division for this. We have our 2-ounce bags, that's where this whole number 2 came from, and we're dividing them into the 1/6, the 1/3, and the 1/2. Now, when we divide, remember, we just use the reciprocal. That means we flip it up, we flip the numbers. So if we did the reciprocal of 1/6, that would be 6/1, which is the same thing as 6. So 2 times 6 equals 12. The reciprocal of 1/3 is 3, so that's going to be 2 times 3, because 3/1 is the same thing as 3, so that's going to be 6. And then the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1, which is the same thing as 2. So 2 times 2 equals 4. So now we know how many 1/6 bags there are, how many 1/3 bags there are, and how many 1/2 bags there are. So we're going to draw an X above each of those to show the number of rice bags. So press pause and create your line plot. This is what your line plot should look like. You should end up with 12 data points in the 1/6 and 4 in the 1/2. And if you should have made sure that all of your X's were in line. So these are all 4. And then you've answered your problem because that's what they asked you to do. For your share and show, all of your problems have to do with this one line plot. So read your problem, look at your data points, and then create your line plot. That will help you answer your questions. And remember, on an average, I'll just leave a note, when you're finding the average, you add everything up, and then you divide it by the total number of data points. Also, when they use the word combined, they are talking about adding, okay, putting everything together. Press pause while you work through the share and show problems. Looking at number 2, it says, what is the combined mass of all the beads with a mass of 2/5 grams? So you need to combine all of these data points. How many are there? There are 5, and they are each at 2/5. Now, when I'm using multiplication, right here it said addition, but they're all the same amount, and multiplication is repeated addition. But when we multiply a whole number times a fraction, the whole number times the numerator equals 10/5, which reduces down to 2 grams. Now on number 3, where it says, what is the combined mass of all the beads? Okay, so all the beads. Well, we know because of number 1 that the 1/5, there's 3 of them, so it's 3/5. And because of number 2, we know the 2/5 add up to a total of 2. So we still need to find 3/5 and 4/5. Now I'm going to do some work up here. I have 3 data points for 3/5, so that's going to end up being 3 times 3/5, which equals to be 9/5. And then 4/5, there are 2 data points times 4/5. 2 times 4 is 8/5. So if I add those down here, 9/5 and 8/5, I add up all my numerators, I end up with 20/5 plus 2 whole numbers. 20 divided by 5 is the same as 4, because there are 4 5s in 20, plus my 2. So how much do they weigh all together? If you add all of the fractions together, you are going to end up with 6. Okay. Now number 4, you're using 6 and dividing it by how many data points there are. So we took 6, divided it by 13 data points, And your answer is 6/13.